Thank you for joining this session today, titled The Silver Lining, Lessons and Opportunities for Africa's Agriculture and Food Systems in the Post-COVID-19 Era. So a brief description on the session: the triple risk of the climate-induced shocks, conflicts, and most recent COVID-19 continues to threaten the food security situation in Africa. The COVID-19 pandemic not only exacerbated the already fragile nutrition and food security situation in the continent, but also added another complex layer of social and economic slowdowns and downturns. The pandemic hit the continent at a very critical time when a number of countries were recovering from the impact of the severe droughts and flooding and dealing with the worst desert locust invasion in 25 years. The current situation has presented immense lessons that cannot be ignored and opportunities that need to be exploited by the stakeholders now more than ever. There is a need to rethink the food system, which calls for concerted efforts to make the system more resilient, sustainable, productive, and inclusive. In this session today, we will seek to understand the initial response taken by various stakeholders to build resilience of the agriculture and food system in the COVID era. Further, we will explore the emerging trends and opportunities for different stakeholders. My name is Michael Omega. I'm a business consultant working in the agricultural sector at Intellecap, and I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. To help guide our discussion today, I'm joined by a distinguished panel. First, we have Sriram Biratam, a leading serial and social entrepreneur who is the founder of Kuza Biashara. Sriram is driven by a commitment to support youth, women, and micro entrepreneurs from the low middle income countries. He achieves this by creating opportunities for the marginalized groups to learn, connect, and grow at scale on their own terms and pace. Sriram mobilizes public and private philanthropy sectors as a system to address complex challenges and opportunities across different sectors, including wash, health, and agriculture. His initiatives has impacted over 6 million youths and created over 150,000 new jobs across Africa and South Asia. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, an MBA international business, and is an executive in education and entrepreneurship from MIT. Next, we have the head of Fresh Division at Twiga Foods, Mr. Nicholas Amaya, an accomplished and hands-on skilled expert and manager in the field of agribusiness with experience spanning over 20 years, having worked with market leaders such as Homegrown and Care International, as well as USAID-funded projects, Kijenge Farming and agro-processing company in Tanzania, and now it's called Magana Flowers. He is skilled in agronomy, agribusiness, setup, and management, contact farming, and outgrowers upskilling. He's also a leader or experience in market linkages, financial planning and management, mentorship, and policy development. We are also lucky to be joined by Mr. Hemense, who is the Vice President Corporate Services at Afex Commodities. In his role, Hemense oversees the management of Afex executive communications and assists to shape the brand's reputation internally and externally, as it strives to meet the diverse needs of its communities and clients. Prior to this, he previously served as the Vice President, Commercials, responsible for leading Afex's local and global sales of agro-commodities while driving profitable growth across the agriculture value chain. He has over 10 years of experience of industry operations and has been instrumental in the development, production, and disbursement of market fit solutions that address the underlying needs of key players in the value chain. He has previously served as an associate in Goldman Sachs, working on various teams across operations, investment management division. He has also led teams responsible for driving the adoption of innovative financial services in the capital markets. Hemense graduated from Calvin University in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he earned a Bachelor's of Science in Accountancy and Masters of Arts in Public Policy from the University of Chicago in Illinois. We are also glad to be joined by Beryl Agengo, a digital agriculture specialist at the World Bank. She coordinates the 1 Million Farmer platform that seeks disruptive agricultural technologies to improve agricultural systems through improved productivity and access to market and data analytics. Before joining the World Bank, Ms. Agengo worked at the Africa Business Group and Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa, Agri. She's passionate about Africa entrepreneurship, startups, youth, and women. Last but not least, we are joined by Andrew Gwadiva, the Vice President at Growth Green Tech Capital Partners, where he is responsible for developing and maintaining relationships with development financial institutions, foundations, investors, entrepreneurs, support organizations, and other entities involved in developing and strengthening the African entrepreneurship ecosystem and supporting the firm's overall growth. He is also a member of the Global Sherpa, who are part of the Global Sherpa community. Andrew has worked in the shoes of an entrepreneur. As a founder, he provides secure housing solutions in informal settlements. He has also built Zao Invest, an African investment consultancy for the diaspora and broader investment community. He previously worked as a head of investor relations and venture partner for a leading ESO that focused on growth stage companies across Africa. His experience spans across Africa's top performing pension schemes, banks, and VCs. He focuses on developing successful ventures in Africa through entrepreneurial peer-to-peer engagement, business support services, and access to investment throughout his work. His current research aligns with designing experiments that will help investors understand the founder and predict risk-related behaviors and testing interventions to the impact repayment behavior and ultimately reduce the risk of default on loans. To kick it off, I'll call upon Nicholas first to give us a brief overview of Twiga Foods and then share his initial observations on the impact of COVID-19 on agriculture and food systems, having worked with different players along the agricultural value chain, specifically farmers and agribusinesses. Over to you, Nicholas.
Thanks, Mike, and thank every one of the panelists that are on this call. So to begin with, as hi, my name is Nicholas Ambanya. Twiga Foods has two trade divisions. That's the fresh, which is basically fresh fruits and vegetables, which was the main product when Twiga was founded, or business line Twiga was founded. And then we also have a dry goods or fast consumer goods division that is in sugar, rice, oils, and about 600 SKUs in that area. Now, what Twiga does, we specialize in aggregating demand using e-commerce, using technology. By this, I mean that we build a digital platform where we connect farmers, producers, manufacturers, and retail outlets on the other side. So we are B2B business platform. Now, on the farming side, which we are specifically talking about, is that we source product from farmers who we have contracted for annually at a fixed price. We provide agronomy support and other support, inputs and the like. And then we uptake product from these farmers, bring the product to a central warehouse in Nairobi, pack it, and then distribute it to our retail outlets there. Now, Twiga's objective and motto or basis of business is that we provide quality, affordable food to our customers. And how do we do this? So working with farmers, we support the farmers with systems that improve productivity. And then what we've been able to do now, we've been able to create efficiency within the supply value chain, where we've eliminated many obstacles and many brokerages, and we created efficiency in terms of how we deliver product from the farm to the warehouse. When this product is delivered to the warehouse, we have onboarded our retail outlets customers who then are able to visualize our warehouse right on their phones, where our app is installed. They can see our products, they can see our prices, they can see our SKUs, and everything else, and they can place their order. And then a routing software picks up these orders, organizes them into routes, and then every morning we send out 170 vehicles plus to deliver these products to the doorsteps of the retail outlets. So by that, we create convenience of delivery. Because we work with farmers directly, we guarantee quality, and there's also a return policy. If a vendor receives a product that is not good quality, it gets replaced. They also make payments on the same platform on delivery. Payments can be cash by mobile money, or can be credit. By credit, I mean that we have, working with the financial institutions, we have built the back end integration into our system, where when a customer or a vendor chooses to pay by credit, the banking system of that particular partner accesses our rich database, calculates or validates the credit worthiness of the vendor in real time, and approves a loan. And by that, the money moves from that banking institution into a bank, and the goods are delivered to the vendor. So those are the kind of convenience aspects to bring to the business of the consumer and our customers. So moving on then to talk about what happened during and obviously post COVID-19. Being a food distributor, we didn't think we'd be affected. We talked, as just like everyone was saying, people must eat at the end of the day. And so we thought business would be as usual. But April 2020, when now the impact of COVID-19 had really now properly sunk, there were lockdowns and all that. We got stuck with the product in our warehouses. Our farmers got stuck with the product in the farms. And then if I give an example, on a normal day, I would distribute 30 metric tons of potatoes. This week, I was hardly distributing 5 tons. And so within the Trigger business, we have a unit called Business Market Intelligence Unit. So we send out this unit to go and find out what is going on. And it dawned on us that the market had become a price-sensitive market. I needed to underline that word, price-sensitive market, because I've been talking to that throughout in this conversation, what it means and what needs to be done. So people had lost jobs, people had had salary cuts, the economy was very bad, and therefore people reduced their meals from 2 to 1, from 3 to 2, and some to none. And what used to be an ordinary fruit of watermelon or banana, which a normal consumer would take, had become a luxury. Tomatoes, onions had become luxuries in meals, and they were not affordable anymore. And so, on the farmers on the other side, because the uptake is low, farmers got stuck with the product in the farms. So what did we do? And just to give you a hint, we distribute about 120 metric tons of fresh food every single day, with the flagship of bananas. Bananas, we do 50 to 60 tons a day. If you are in Nairobi, out of 10 bananas each, 5 come from Trigger. That's the kind of market leadership that we have. And so what we then did is that to react to it, is that we looked for ways to cut cost, to offer the product at a market competitive price. One of the things we did was to forego our margin. So on the second day, when I lowered my margin on potatoes from 20% to 5%, I sold 30 tons. Now, on the farmer side now, we work with the fixed annual price. And the annual price works in this way that out of 12 months, we lose by paying farmers a price higher than the market price for 3 months. And then for 9 months, for 8 to 9 months, we make up that money, and then everybody's a winner. So we do not believe in paying a farmer a price below the production cost. That is how we sustain our supply chain. And so there are 3 to 4 months out of the year where we will pay 30 shillings when everybody is paying 20 shillings, that kind of a thing, and vice versa. So but there's a time then we'll maintain paying the 30 shillings at the contract price when everybody's paying 40 shillings. That's how we balance off the market. But the main thing, the main aim and the main objective being to sustain the farmer so that they can come back and farm tomorrow again and supply to us. Now, we paid a higher price for 3 months and we could not continue paying for the 4th month because prices had collapsed. What was going to happen is that we were going to run out of cash and the farmer was going to be stuck. So we had to negotiate with the farmers and say, this is the price we would like to buy at, but the difference between this price and the contract price will be postponed and we'll pay it at a later date when the situation improves. It was just to make sure the farmers don't get stuck with the product and also to make sure that we are able to move the product if we take it from the farmers, because then it had to be sold at a very competitive price. So that is one of the approaches that we immediately took up to solve the issue. Create discounts, lower prices, create efficiencies, and rediscuss prices for currently and the future. Obviously, Mike, that's not sustainable. You know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Nicholas. We'll get to that a little bit more later. I'd just like to go over to Sriram now. So just like Twiga, you also had to traverse the murky COVID waters. How did you cope with the pandemic, and what was the initial response of your organization to manage the crisis?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, when COVID hit us, just before that, 2019, we were in 3 counties with about 15 agripreneurs. As KUSA, we create opportunities for youth, women, and small business owners to learn, connect, and grow. Within agriculture space, we identify and incubate youth as agripreneurs, agriculture entrepreneurs, and build the capacities, give them a portable digital kit with which they are able to now provide a 360-degree service offering to their farmers, each one serving about 200 farmers. They provide digital advisory and information service. They capture the demand, and now we are able to pipe from multiple service providers. So we were in only 3 counties, but when COVID hit us, that's when we realized that extreme conditions are a fertile soil for extreme innovation. Because our model was pivoted on a decentralized model where we are empowering youth within the communities and within the wards and the county or sub-county level, we were able to quickly ramp up our operations to 29 counties. Because it's about repeatability, it is about a process that was set. The 3 core pillars on which we build our institution were on people, process, and technology. So we had all of them ready. And that's when we managed to create a few strategic partnerships. And this is where also being part of the 1 million farmer platform with the World Bank gave us the access to the counties to work directly with the counties. And everybody was lost. There was no, I mean, the pathways were not clearly defined. This is the first time that a situation like this has arrived. So we had to actually think out of the box and come out with a solution. So we launched 2 initiatives around this time. And the way we managed to scale is fundamentally, we launched a product called REDI, REDI, Rural Entrepreneur Development Incubators. These are the incubators without 4 walls. We've already digitized 42 agriculture value chains in a video format. We already digitized a lot of business and entrepreneurship skills content. So we bundled all of this and managed to make it a mobile delivery system. And that's how we were able to get empower a set of rural entrepreneurs to do it and then link them to the opportunities. But I'm happy to dig deeper. But that's been our story. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sriram. And I think we'll get to how the digitization helped in the efforts to adapt to the new situation. So I'll just go back. I'll just go to Andrew and ask the same question that I posed to Nicholas. I'm curious to understand the observations on the impact of COVID on agri and food systems from an investor's perspective. So what was the impact on the pipeline in terms of your portfolio companies, ongoing conversations with potential investees, and the generally the fund's investment strategy moving forward?
Okay, for us, and I think most of the investors in the space, what we saw, I mean, when it comes to investees, some lockdown policies disrupted the supply chain, and by disrupting the supply chains, there were changes in food productions and some uneven food price effects that, of course, increased poverty and food security. That's what we saw. So when it came to, of course, most of our portfolio companies were struggling. But again, what exactly could we then do when it came to mitigating the struggles at the moment. Some of the things that we saw, especially when it came to the portfolio, was of course what we're discussing about, especially when it comes to what I've heard from the panel, especially when it comes to digitization. Yeah, the value architecture itself. When we looked at the value architecture, especially on how exactly some of the companies reach their customers, most of it was not as digitized. Yeah, when we looked at the value architecture, even on how they get the supply, most of it was not digitized. I mean, we started by understanding the value architecture of each and every specific company and seeing how exactly we can digitize the processes. That's how we did with our portfolio company. So our first step was a strategic analysis in each and every particular company. So with that strategic analysis, that's how we came up with some of the solutions that will kind of help the companies themselves. And of course, the other thing that we saw, of course, especially when it comes to new portfolio, we could no longer, I mean, as investors, we could no longer do due diligence. Yeah. So what that did, especially when it came to our end, I mean, right now we are seeing a lot of syndicates that are being formed. They're no longer solo investors. I mean, there are few solo investors. 90% of the investments at the moment in Africa, across Africa and in emerging markets, are purely on syndicates. So that came up because of this. And then back to the digitization, we realized that we are doing this only for our investees companies. But we realized, okay, we can as well scale this particular model and reach more companies itself. So through that, since we are also big in Francophone Africa, through that we partnered with AFD. We came up with a capacity building more program called the Digital Boost program, where we reached close to 150 companies over 9 months. And this 150 companies over nine months, I'll say close to 30% of that particular portfolio was in agriculture. And our work was to help them think through the supply chain, especially when it comes to how exactly do they receive their goods, and how exactly do they reach their customers through the digital way. So that's what we saw, especially when it came to the COVID-19 impact.
All right, thank you so much, Andrew. I'll bring it back to an entrepreneur and just bring in Hemens and ask the same question. So what was the initial response in your organization to manage the COVID-19 crisis? Considering, we've heard from two companies that are more or less operating in the East Africa and Southern Africa region. So was the response or sort of similar in your experience?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, Mike. And definitely the response was very, very similar and in line. So we face similar challenges that we're seeing across the board. Nigeria had its own set of issues way before, COVID even came. And once COVID hit, it just exacerbated the same issues across the board. So we saw a rise in food prices, by inflation hit over 15%. Farmer incomes were also threatened. Food security in the country was highlighted, and socioeconomic opportunities was also on a downturn. And we saw this disruption both in local supply chains as well as in export products. We had several containers that were sitting at the ports for months, and that exacerbated relationships with our clients and other suppliers due to the bottlenecks that ensued. On the positive end, though, just to mention, I think, because we tend to focus just on the negative outcomes, but on the positive end, there was this renewed sort of interest by the government on fixing local supply chain issues, right? And then there was also this renewed interest by industrial groups on how do we manage risk going forward and looking for products to suit that. And that's how AFEX Response was formed. So it was, we're adequately fit to solve like technological challenges that come to place. And so we sort of moved our business online. And having first sort of observed the local lockdowns and restrictions from COVID, we then started to do everything on our technological platform. So, we manage all the warehouses through a system we called Workbench, in which we can actually input information and distribute information across our entire network of farmers. We then received information back on that database as well. Farmers or our field extension officers were able to take pictures of their farms and shoot that back to AFEX head Q. And that's kind of how we managed the business throughout that system, throughout that tenure of COVID. So yeah, it was definitely about moving things onto digital platforms and then coming up with creative solutions for our clients. And so because of, trying to manage the risk, we started to introduce other financial products that could help manage risk down the line for some of our clients.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hemans. I think a lot of digitization happening. We'll get to just discuss the particulars of this further down the conversation. But I'd now just like to bring in Beryl into the conversation. So in the midst of the pandemic, government adopted policies to contain the spread of the virus, which created supply chain bottlenecks in a way. And this affected the flow of food and agri products, and particularly policies that resulted in disruption of global and regional trade on food and agricultural products, disruptions in input, supply, farm, labor availability and extension services, and interruptions in logistics and processing and market access, as well as disruption in livelihoods for casual laborers and non-farming communities, changes in how consumers access food. So what initiatives did the World Bank start to sort of support the agri sector in that sense?
Thank you, Mike. That's a very loaded question. There's a lot that the World Bank did, and there's a lot that different governments did. And as you understand, the model of the World Bank is that we take the governments to be our key clients. And as such, our role was to support the governments, whichever country, to ensure that they were able to cope better with the COVID pandemic, whether it was just on production or on consumer goods or on the market access line, different things, but to ensure that the governments had to help the farmer. So as an example, on the consumer side of things, we were able to see that there was social protection and help in nutrition. Like Nicholas, I think it was Nicholas who said that farmers were, people are moving from 3 meals to 2 meals or 2 meals to 1 meal or no meal at all. So that in the end, we were able to help governments see that how best do we package particular meals and actually help them distribute the same, so that those who completely didn't have food were able to at least have a stimulus package given to whoever didn't have food. And the different governments or counties had to identify the particular people who are largely affected, and especially those in the urban sectors, because there was limited food from rural areas into the urban sector, as an example. There was also an issue with production support that was given to by different governments, seeing that subsidies were given for seeds or inputs, because again, import-export had slowed down, and as such, there was limited input. As a farmer, you are thinking, do I buy more inputs to produce, and where will I sell if there is a restriction? Or do I focus on planting or growing or keeping, doing a different value chain? So if you're doing short crops before, like vegetables, tomatoes, potatoes, now you decide that with the amount of money you have and thinking forward, then maybe you'd rather do maize. And as such, there was a market disruption on what exactly is the farmer going to do. So as World Bank or the government support, again, they were helping the farmers have subsidies on the particular inputs that were being given. And we know as large, and I think this affects the larger East Africa, if not the whole of Africa, fertilizer prices are now very ridiculous. They have not even increased by 100%. It's more than like 200% the cost. And governments are trying to see how best do we help fertilizer prices come down to an area that is now more suitable for the farmers. The last one is actually looking at import-export related issues by different governments. How best do we help? We find that the shipping lanes are now better. The lockdowns have been improved a little bit better, and as such, things are able to move, but just putting in place policies where we can even actually monitor and largely monitor what a country has in place, and as such, creating a food balance sheet. who is growing what and monitoring that and knowing that in the next season, this is what you should expect as a government or as a team. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you so much. So I'll just go back to the entrepreneurs. So all of you have integrated different, technology platforms to sort of mitigate the challenges that you faced during this COVID period. So, like you mentioned, there's the Ready platform, and there's also the One network that you're currently using. So sort of how has the digitization and the prevalence of these ICT services helped reduce the impact on the food system? Any of you can just pick it up, and then we'll pass it along depending on the responses available.
Just repeat again. I had a bit of some outage. Yeah.
So so the question is, we've had digitization of introduction of different platforms to help just deal with the crisis that embarked on us. So my question is, how has this digitization and prevalence of these ICT services helped reduce the impact on the food system in your experience?
Thank you very much. Indeed, when you look at Mike, the very origin, how Trigger was formed and how it was founded. The founders stumbled on a report that had been done by World Bank years ago. And the report was indicating that there exists an informal market within Nairobi City alone worth $3 billion annually. But then this market is unstructured, it is disjointed, disgruntled, and anybody who will find a way to aggregate and organize this market will make big business out of it. And that's exactly what Trigger has done. So the markets are not structured here in Nairobi and in Kenya and actually in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa mainly, the way it is done in Europe. And so the digital platform that we built has quite helped. Now, you can imagine now, where the customers, our customers who are the retail outlets, were able to transact right from the comfort of their homes without moving out to endanger themselves or expose themselves to COVID issues and things like that. It became it became the height of convenience. The digital platform that we built became the height of convenience. They were able to use our platform to check other prices elsewhere, which information we provided. They were able to analyze their own business. And on our side now, without even being able to go out there in the farms, the technologies that we have, the technology which is seamless architecture and advanced analytics, were able to help us manage farm profiles, harvest planning, mobile money payments. So, there was no physical money changing hands. The business intelligence, we were able to track the behavior of farmers and vendors or retailers at the same time, be able to notice areas of intervention and things like that. And now, of course, the same digital platform came together with fintech, where we at the comfort of the homes, farmers and retailers would register for credit, get money to be able to stock up their shops, so buy inputs, do what they need to do. And so, really, I think just as a gentleman from Nigeria said, there's a positive side to it. We saw more appreciation of digital e-commerce transactions during this time than ever before. And I think that has laid a foundation for future growth. Even if COVID was to go away, I think the benefits of digital services have been appreciated, that they are here with us, and they'll form the next phase of growth. Back to Mike.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. And so I'll just pass it to Himense now. He mentioned that they had integrated a platform, a workbench. So how did this help in the cause of sort of helping to reduce that impact on the food system, making sure that we can offtake food from the producers and still provide this food onto the tables of some of the people, mostly within marginalized areas as well as urban areas where we had this challenge.
Sure. So a big problem in agriculture, especially on the continent, is about financing and the unwillingness of the commercial sector to lend funds to agriculture. And they don't because they don't know it and they don't know the farmers. There isn't that trust and that credit history amongst them. So during this period, we also launched our digital trading platform called COMEX. So once a farmer brings in a stock, a commodity, a bag of maize, grains to the warehouse, it then gets digitized and securitized into a security that can now be traded, right? So any money that's then raised is raised from commercial entities, from capital market players here in country, is then used to fund a farmer bringing in some goods to a warehouse, and then with that unlocks a whole lot of other potentials that you can do. You can now raise funding for different notes. You can actually now raise commercial paper, asset backed by the commodities that we have in our warehouse. So, using that electronic warehouse receipt system was a big boon for everyone in the process. Now, I just want to mention quickly, right, that you do have to, it's important to be progressive with technology, but you have to do it in a way that's culturally appropriate and sensitive, and not just leapfrog current practices that are being done. And so we saw that as we tried to move towards mechanization and sort of precision farming. We imported some technology from Israel, I believe, that was some drip irrigation technology, and didn't quite work because we weren't able to actually make it appropriate for farmers at this level, right? So we then had to change the program, change the protocol, and do it in a systemic way to get them towards precision farming. It wasn't just going to happen overnight. So yeah, I just wanted to share that it's important to be culturally sensitive and appropriate in the way that you go about this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Imense. So I'd just like to hear from Sriram. You mentioned that you have this new platform ready. So how did that help sort of alleviate this impact on the food system?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I would actually want to take it at a much broader level than what Kuza has done. Simply because, contextually, there are three things that happened. Number one, a lot of people from the bigger cities moved back to their villages. Now, that's a massive shift that happened because of the high cost of living. And they also took with them the knowledge, they also took with them access, the networks, and the ability to use digital platforms, because most of them are trained in doing it. Until then, majority of them were doing telephone farming. Now they actually started getting into doing it themselves. More like to be very honest, a lot of people said, I don't know what else to do, so I started doing farming. And in the process, one side benefit is I lost some weight, but I also learned how to do it. And I started guiding my people on how to do this. That's number one. Number two, the public sector, and specifically speaking about Kenya, a lot of initiatives happened around the same time. And some of the technologies have also matured around the same time. Like there is this big data platform initiative that's happening within the country. The Agriculture Transformation Office has brought in some of the very interesting insights and platforms and thinking together. And private sector, almost every known organization, call it a startup or call it a mature company, all of them have started an initiative in digital, something around learning, something about transactions, something about this. But most importantly, communities actually at the grassroots level embrace this change because, again, lack of any other opportunities. So when they realize, for example, we had a good network of entrepreneurs on the ground. When COVID happened, we quickly created something called a Corona Warrior. Using some of these basic AI technologies, we created a basic scanning tool with which these same entrepreneurs who are trained in agriculture to do farmers engagement and extension quickly adopted a way of trying to talk to them. And this is something we encourage them, saying, this is the time you need to be closer to your customers. Don't leave them. Don't leave their hand. And that really helped us to grow exponentially because the trust got reestablished. They were able to reach out to them, educate them in bite-sized nuggets as to what they need to do. Because the public information, the public health information was not reaching the communities. That's where they played an extremely important role. And even the community started engaging because all of a sudden, we have seen an excellent uptake of using technologies. Channels like WhatsApp have become very popular. People have started conversations. They were very open to new and better ways of learning and doing things. And in my view, I think overall as an ecosystem, we have leapfrogged from where we were in 2019 to now where we are. I see almost a 5-year jump, which would have otherwise taken 5 years, we've done in half the time.
Thank you, Sriram. So in the same breath, Andrew, in your perspective, what's the role of ICT in agriculture and in building and sustaining Africa's food system?
I mean, as simple as, so when it comes to ICT, so ICT for us, especially when it comes to investors, and most of the investors, I mean, at the moment we are trying to ensure that farmers have uninterrupted access to markets. Yeah, when it comes to either them purchasing their inputs and selling their products, and even setting up corridors in times of crisis, especially for the strategic value chains that we're seeing at the moment. Yeah, so that's the key thing when it comes to ICT. And another thing, when it comes to ICT, I mean, now there has to be a seamless flow of cash flow. So how exactly do we then finance when it comes to financing itself? I mean, right now, what we are doing at the moment is we are trying to engage banks to set up and scale up the agricultural SMEs departments and extend financing to the sectors. So this itself is also has been enabled through technology itself. So ICT is playing that particular role.
Not at the moment, Mike. I feel like the team has covered it well. Like there's a lot of things that need to be done, and the team's actually doing it. And it's good to see that there's the same challenges we're having in West Africa, or the same initiatives are also being done in the East African area.
All right, thank you so much. So I'll just pull you back in, Beryl. So what are some of the emerging trends and opportunities that are out there that can strengthen the agri and food system to provide food security, and healthy diets for African population?
Food security, the themes still remain the same. We've seen a lot of startups come up because farmers for a while didn't know what to do, and then they ended up wholly turning into digital systems. So you'll find that most startups or most innovations now, or even the guys who were old school agronomists, agrovets, now almost have a digital angle to their solution. Whatever they're doing is a digital angle. You can either use USSD code, or you can use your smartphone to try and solve a problem. And as such, there are very many new solutions in the market that actually really honestly do nurturing. There's a lot of people who are coming up to help with the nurturing. And I feel like if the teams are collated, or if people agree to kind of work together, then the solutions will be able to actually leapfrog or get the farmers moving a little bit faster. Some of the new trends are now you can actually order things online. And this includes farm inputs, and your border guy will deliver it for you, and you don't have to move from your farm or your home to actually get it. And the quality of what you're getting now will be different from if you actually went to the market. And it kills the whole vibe of where we used to say that people actually had to go to the agrovets because they wanted to step out and go and talk, and that's the way people mingle. But if you know that you can get all these solutions via phone, then it gets to be a little bit more encouraging. We are also seeing, like from Kuza Biashara, a lot of young people who now also can't get jobs are turning into e-extension workers. And the e-extension workers is also a new trend because it is a younger person who's more learned. So a farmer can either go to his old extension worker or try the new person who will give them more solutions that are a little bit more digitized. I'll allow the rest of the teams to give in their inputs as well. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I'll move it over to Afex. They have a digital market platform, COMEX, that Hemse just touched on. So Hemse, what are the key trends and opportunities out there that you've seen, while deploying this platform and yeah,
yes.
Hemse, yeah, please.
So we have an OTC over-the-counter trading aspect of this, and a lot like the last participant said, we're developing a feature which you're able to at the click of a button order, say, a truck of fertilizer or a truck of maize be delivered to your farm location. So that's an innovation that we're looking forward to launching in the upcoming years. But more broadly speaking, as far as trends that we're seeing, because of the disruption of supply chains, we're looking at more localized supplies being done. We're seeing a move towards urbanization of agriculture, seeing vertical farms start to spring up, seeing aquaculture coming up more and more as well. And taking it back to the fields, we're seeing more two-seasonal rotational farming. So we're looking at dry season farming that's taking place, and we're seeing farmers complement, say, stable, low-cost goods with farming vegetables or other perishables during dry season, and that complement is also going to be a boon for the country as a whole.
Great, thank you. And Nicholas?
Sorry,
Sriram.
One of the key benefits of digital systems, Mike, is farmers having access to real-time, accurate, reliable information. That has been a big issue, especially when we have rogue middlemen. Rogue, I mean, middlemen can be organized, like in the export sector. In Kenya here, HCDA, which is the authority managing horticulture, managed to reform brokers and are now called agents. They were registered, they were trained, there were rules that were designed by which they operate. They have their own farmers and contracts, things like that. So in the absence of that kind of a situation on locally consumed products, farmers were falling prey to wrong information and misinformation, and therefore losing out. And so this is one area that the digital systems that have helped improve the situation. And I think it can only get better with the more penetration of mobile networks, more education, awareness, more development of easy to use products in terms of digital products for the semi-literate farmers and things like that. Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Sriram, I think you have an education platform, and so how have you seen this improve the agri and food system?
Mike, I want to take a completely different approach here to share interesting insights on the ground.
All right.
An average farmer with a smartphone today has close to 30 apps on their device.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, in less than 2 years, we moved from a situation where there was nothing to all of a sudden there are so many options. Now, which one to trust? Which one is real? Which one is not real? What is the continuity of any of these things? So that's where there's a big challenge, and that's kind of hitting us right now. The model and the approach that we have taken at Kuza is that we are creating a last mile credible, trusted advisor network with a very clear intention and a model that we are not recreating what others are doing. We are curating, we are working closely with the potential partners and bringing those solutions together. And by the way, this is hard. This is hard work because people don't want to work with anyone else. Everybody has their own way of thinking. And this is hard work, but we put up our hands saying that we want to go up this path simply because trust is the currency on which we are operating. When you establish trust with a farmer by educating them, hand-holding them, and doing all of that, it's also equally responsible. We also feel equally responsible that we need to get the right product and service delivered. And that's where accountability is coming into play. And that's the whole purpose of One Network. A One Network is a single platform that we put together, where all we are telling other service providers who have fantastic solutions and a service delivery model that plug and play, bring that in. Like we are in advanced conversations with one of the aggregators of inputs. Rather than we going and talking to 10 different input companies, we are talking to one digital innovator who has already managed to integrate all of that. And we are now creating a model called a mobile agro-vet. We are empowering these youth entrepreneurs on the move. All they go along with is another device in their hand where they're able to book the order and the entire fulfillment is happening. Now that plug and play at a technology level is made possible because we have a human user interface at the last mile. And that's how we are bringing in the fusion into this.
Thank you so much, Sriram. Yeah, thank you. And so my next question would be, what are your plans for the next year? I know we are almost out of time. I think we have around 30 minutes, and I'd like us to address a couple of questions from the members or participants that have joined the call today. And one of the questions that also ties into my question to you is, what are your plans for the next year? How are you looking to scale your business this coming year?
I'll go first.
Sure.
Thanks. So if you recall, Mike, and I'm very, very fast, I talked about the issue of affordability and markets becoming price sensitive. One of the things that we have established through an extensive market research here and abroad is that if anyone wants to scale business in agriculture, agribusiness in fresh produce, or even just real agribusiness and all food, the food market, we need to address primary production. During COVID-19, we had a situation whereby if we didn't have a shortage of food, we had excess food that consumers could not afford. A very strange scenario that nobody would expect is happening in Africa. We had food that was rotting in farms and shops and everywhere because people cannot afford. Very strange. Now, so that's another angle to food security. Not just availability, but affordability. And so we have, with this coming year, straight to your question, we have set out to address the issue of productivity. Our primary business is not to be involved in primary production, but because of sustainability of the value chain, we've had to get involved in primary production, and we are working with various partners to bring down the cost of production, which will then improve productivity by then bring down cost of production, and then be able to have a competitive price that we can offer to our consumers to afford the produce. That's our focus for the coming year, working with various partners, World Bank among them and others. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Hemente, you want to go next?
Yes, yeah, let me jump in. So for us as AFEX, we're still centered and focused on the mission of creating efficient, sustainable market systems dedicated to smallholder farmers. But given the crisis that we experienced and the need, we realized that we need to move up to a different target market in order to reach the productivity levels and efficiency levels that are required to actually make the continent sustainable. So we're going to start focusing on commercial farmers and seeing how we can help them with mechanization services and improve their productivity. We're starting to scale as well. So we launched a pilot program in Kenya this year for the first time. And so that's also an exciting feature, and we're looking to go into other African countries. And lastly, we also see the need to develop digital products. So looking at derivatives to arrive towards the end of the year, maybe not open to public until next year, but then how do we start working with consultants to create a system that can allow our processors, industrial groups to hedge in the market and manage their risk better.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Sriram, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Our plans are very simple. We are actually growing the network of youth agripreneurs in the rural settings. The more agripreneurs we are adding, the more farmers we are engaging. The more farmers means more service providers are interested. And that's how we are spinning the flywheel. And for us to succeed, while we are focusing a lot on creating more and more agripreneurs, we are opening up this entire model. And our focus is to create this as an ecosystem platform. The call to action for some of the developmental organizations and NGOs is you have programs that are running and you're ending the programs on a calendar. We are giving an exit option to them, saying you already have 20,000 farmers, you have some extension workers. We are talking to them and then saying, let's transition them into a sustainable model. That's one. Number two, with the governments, we are directly working with 19 county governments in Kenya, and we are adding another 10 odd counties. So partnerships with the government is an extremely important strategic initiative for us because we can only achieve scale when it is at government scale. And that's where we are spending a lot of time to build the capacities at the county level, to build the capacities at the last mile in the extension networks, and also see that we are able to bring curated service providers to the table. And in terms of expansion, we are launching 3 countries in East Africa this quarter, and we are adding another 3 countries in the next quarter. We are going very systematically by working with, again, large international groups, NGOs, and also private sector partners. And then seeing that, where they already have existing farmers and existing networks, we are bringing this entire ecosystem of service providers and the digital innovators together to transform this. So where we are, In the next 24 months, we would be growing our network to at least 3,000 entrepreneurs in Kenya, and also repeating the same in the East Africa and then the West Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sriram. I think I'll move over to the questions. So we have a question that came in from Rachel. So Rachel asks, and I think this also ties into Sriram's point on the fact that, farmers might have like 30 applications on their phones, and most of them would be, serving the same purpose. So it's one of the key challenges facing the sector, and its availability and accessibility of up-to-date data, which is the challenge that Rachel is referring to. So her question is, what are the opportunities when it comes to data gathering and centralization, and how can players work together? So I think I'll pass it over to Andrew, and then I think Beryl can also share her views on this.
Could you repeat that again? Sorry. What are the opportunities?
So the question is, one of the key challenges facing the sector is availability and accessibility of up-to-date data. So what are the opportunities when it comes to data gathering and centralization, and how can players work together?
Okay, so one of the things that we are doing at the moment, especially for agtech companies, when it comes to data and getting real data, is we are trying as much as possible to help the agtech companies to see how exactly they can increase mobile coverage, especially to rural areas. When it comes to them just trying to access the right kind of data. So I'll say that when it comes to what we are doing with the companies that we are working with at the moment. Yeah. What do you, Mike?
Thank you. Beryl, any responses to this before I throw it to one of the entrepreneurs? Thank you. Go ahead,
yes,
please.
Definitely. It's a very interesting question, because everyone who has data does not want to share. And those who want to share say, I will give you some subsets of the data and not the full data set. And then there's the whole data privacy issue, just to protect the farmer, which is very key. We've been, as World Bank, we've been working with the SDGs office, the Ministry of Agriculture, to see how best we can create a platform where those who have data can plug in their data and access or improve what they have going forward. It is still revolving, it's still a work in progress, and we are asking all partners just to help us put it together, because in the end, all these farmers are Ministry of Agriculture farmers or the Statistics Office farmers. So whoever has a database, just finding a way to align so that we have a common place. Or for example, if a startup wants to start work in Kenya, can they get a database of farmers and see exactly where they can start from, so that they're not going to start from scratch, whereby you have to recruit the farmers, create your own database, who is doing what. And I believe the ministry is doing something around it. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to Sriram.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think just to add to what Beryl just shared, it's also important for us to think through what are the motivations for different actors to share the data. Today, the motivations are very limited. Everybody is trying to create their own little island to do it. So this is where, after a lot of deliberations, and we've actually been doing a lot of design workshops, and thanks to the support from the World Bank, we actually co-hosted an initiative called Unconference in 2019. And where we got 50 industry actors into a room and had a very honest conversation, talking with them, saying, what is their motivation? What is it that they want? Within that room, we had commitments. We managed to get commitments close to $15 million in terms of monetary value, where people had capacities, unused capacities. They're all out there, but we need an anchor. We need somebody in between to bring this all together. And I think that's the challenge. And that's where, as KUSA, we have put up our hand. We are trying to do our bit. But I don't think it's an effort could be done only by one. It has to be a combination. And the Disruptive Agriculture Technology Initiative within the World Bank in Kenya, around the 1 million farmer platform, already there are 25 of us as innovators. We are together. We are now looking at synergies. We are looking at how we can work together. And hopefully by end of this year, we would have a working model that can actually be used as a learning model to scale. Yes, a lot of efforts are going in the direction from public sector, private sector, and also innovators. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much, Sriram. Hemense, do you have anything to add?
No, actually, no, not really. I think everyone has really like hit the nail on the head here. I fully agree with Sriram's point. Like, what is the motivation to share the data, and how can you do it collectively? But just to buttress the point of the importance of us getting to that level, currently we're working with different states in Nigeria, and they're trying to understand the different agricultural value chains, that are taking place and where they can make budgetary allocations to, and it's hard to come up with that subset of data. We have to create it, in a crude method, going door to door, and it's just not efficient at all. So yeah, the need is there, but how do we come to a point where people are willing and open with sharing data? It is a challenge.
Right. Nicholas, anything to add before we move on to the question?
Yes, Mike. Truly speaking, so indeed, technology is key towards development of farming systems going forward. But as Sriram has actually rightly said, how do we then just make sure that the farmers access enough technology, not everything left, right from everyone? How do we then filter and manage and administrate what the farmers should actually have at their disposal for use, and what is the right thing for them? So I think efforts like he's trying to look at what's available and trying to guide farmers to the right thing. And those of us, again, are important farmers. I think we have another responsibility of not just letting every technology go to the farmer, but filtering and really make sure there's value for the farmer in technology. Thanks. Back to you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Atin, and are there any subsidies available for farmers who would like to join in on this technology boom in the event where they may not have the means to do so? Or could this technology shift lead to some player being left behind? I think I'll leave this to Beryl to respond before we move it along to the rest of the panelists.
Thank you, Mike. I feel like that question is double-sided. And maybe I'll try and answer both ways. Is it about the startups joining the technology boom, or is it about the farmers? So for the farmers who are now starting to farm and improving on what they're doing, there is the e-voucher system that has been created by the government that offers subsidies for the farmers. And it has been running for a while, and it's doing well, and it's been scaled up, where farmers do actually get subsidized inputs from particular centers, and they have to be registered, and we know them, or at least because of devolution, the county officials know them, and it is something that has been going and it is doing well. Now, if the question was about the startups joining the boom and being left behind, there are now different platforms offering different solutions. From that, so far we have 24 the last 2 years, and we have a criteria for shortlisting them. Now, we do not want to leave anyone behind, but we are an accelerator, not a startup hub. So maybe in the ecosystem, create the ideas and get to a certain sector behind. I hope I've answered the question correctly, looking at it both ways. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you. And Andrew, anything to add on this?
Yeah, I think if it's in a startup way, I mean startups and companies, as they say. So there has to be an analysis and trying to see, is there a need of even having the technology in the business itself? I mean, we have Trigger here, and I know Trigger, there's a partnership with Jumia and Trigger, yeah, but that enabled Trigger just to access consumers directly. That's one of the examples. So it's trying to see what's the use of technology, and if there's the need of technology, do we really need to build that technology? Can we build up partnerships that will enhance that particular kind of technology, or what exactly is the need of the technology? But again, we for agtech companies, we are seeing that the activities are increasing sharply, especially during this pandemic, and new solutions are coming up through technology just to overcome logistics or kind of marketing bottlenecks. But at the end of the day, as any company, there has to be an analysis on, do we really need this particular technology, or can we partner with any player in the place? Another example that I've seen, I mean, in Cote d'Ivoire, if you go to Cote d'Ivoire, there's a company called Incestive, yeah, that has repurposed its pesticide spraying drones to spray the farms and the likes, yeah. So that for them, technology came through mechanization. I mean, so again, some kind of analysis in the company itself, just to see what the need is. And of course, with all kinds of technology, there also has to be some cost burden. So does it even make sense when it comes to the cost itself? Yeah. So rather than thinking about jumping into the shift, is doing an analysis in your own particular company and trying to see what exactly, if we bring in technology, is it going to help the company or not? Yeah. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, so I'll just ask one person to respond to this one. I know it might not be very relevant for the entrepreneurs to respond, but I mean, I'd just like them to share maybe their experience with this. You know, what like incentivize them to begin or to include some level of technology within their business, and you know, the experience with that so far. So I'll just ask maybe Himense to respond to that.
Yeah, so I mean, this from what I got from the questions is how do we democratize this technological boom that's taking place? And one solution AFEX has come up with is to initiate a franchise model. So we know that us ourselves aren't going to be able to reach our target of 1 million farmers in the next 5 years. And so how do we then empower other agri-service providers to do that? And so we can then provide them with financing option. We can provide them with use of our technology, which we can we register their farmers and how they manage their own facilities, and any interaction that they have, whether it's trading or whether it's loan provision, all through this singular piece of data, or the singular piece of table that manages all the client information. And so I think that's way that somebody that isn't already empowered fully can get into that status and get the support of an institution like AFEX in order to do, you know, to do the mission that aligns with both organizations together here.
Yeah, I can see Sriram agrees. Sriram, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think pretty much it's covered, and I really like the way Himense put it. Democratization of these technologies is the bottom line, really. How do we do this? And I would only say, what is the path of least resistance? Everyone is trying to create their own path to reach the farmer and burdening them with too many choices. Now, how do you filter this? And this is where, as much as everyone is, you find it challenging to work with governments. Governments can actually play, the local governments can play an extremely important role of neutralizing it, harmonizing it, and packaging that as a solution for a specific value chain, for a specific community of farmers. And a lot of it is around capacity building and ability to think differently. Because of these available technologies today, the way you have been doing farming, you don't necessarily need to follow the same path. And there's a massive intergenerational crisis going on right now, and it's important to be cognizant of that. An average Kenyan farmer is 63-year-old, and an average Kenyan is 19-year-old. And both the younger generation and also the elder generation don't want the next generation to continue doing farming. So what is their motivation to do that? All of them are migrating to bigger cities. Whereas if only we can empower them, if only we can give them a set of these technologies to be able to do things in a different way. And ultimately, I think as a farmer is end of the day a business person. The way we have seen this entire thing is, how do we bring the total cost of cultivation low? And within that, in fact, one of the questions Kathy asked is around the ESG side. Maybe Mike, when we go to that question, I would like to give some insight on that.
Kindly just, please, Sriram, just go ahead and respond to it.
Okay, so in terms of the way we started looking at it is from the environment protection point of view. Again, pesticides and fertilizers is a solution, but not necessarily the solution. So there are alternate ways of doing natural ways of kind of doing it, but the education is not there. So this is where like what we are doing as Kuza is we have already digitized 42 agriculture value chains, including livestock, in micro learning video formats in 10 languages, and we now need to add additional 20 languages and dialects to it. But what we are doing is, this is bite size. In 3 minutes, you are able to communicate to a farmer in a local dialect, facilitated by an entrepreneur in terms of what it takes to do this. And it's a circular economy just right in there. And to just give an example, as part of the World Bank initiative in Nakuru, we have an entrepreneur called Robert. As he was doing this extension to about 200 of his farmers last year, he realized that fertilizer is the most important thing that's coming up. And they quickly thought, and he created a youth group of about 13 of them who came together. They started an enterprise. They're doing biofertilizer, and they are not able to meet the demand. And it is at half the price of a general fertilizer available within the market. So the point is, yes, if we bring the way we can communicate this to the farmers is to say, your total cost of cultivation, where you're putting inputs and your services and other things, can come down if you go down this path. Talking environment to them may not make sense to somebody who is just earning $2 to $3, but showing an alternate path, hand-holding them and guiding them through the process is the one that actually is a winner. And that would also cover, Cathy, to your question, the sustainability side of it, because when you are able to create this locally, the local economy thrives, and also you are now able to bring the all the key actors into it. And it is, end of the day, farmer is the customer. The whole industry is dependent on what farmer is paying. Yes, of course, there are subsidies, but a farmer is the one who is paying, and they have the purchasing power, but it's just that they don't have a collective voice. The moment you bring their collective voice and organize this at the last mile, the whole industry would align. And that's what we have seen happening during the COVID time. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much, Sriram. I think you've covered that comprehensively. So I'll just move to the next question. So the question is from Adenkule. Technology has penetrated certain areas of agriculture, but it is lacking in some. What areas of agriculture will you like to see technology redefined on the continent? I'll address this directly to Andrew as an investor. Kindly, Andrew, give us your perspective on this.
Yes, thank you, Adekula, for asking that question. So the future trends when it comes to technology in agriculture. So beautiful question. So I'll break it down into three: production, supply, market and consumer demand. So when it comes to production, things like farm mechanization. So we need to see more of the farm mechanization coming into place. Agri fintech solutions, yeah. So agri fintech solutions for us, it's the inputs purchase or access to inputs due to lockdowns. So what are the agri fintech solutions that should come up? I mean, the agri inputs when it comes to the marketplace itself. What kind of technology can be built when it comes to that? The simplest solution that I've seen, it's still in production. I mean, when it comes to farm management information system. So farm management information system is big at the moment in Southeast Asia. So that has to be strengthened in Africa if you're talking on an African landscape. So when it comes to supply, that was on production. When it comes to supply itself, I mean, three things involved. So when it comes to things like the primary storage solutions, I mean, we've been talking about this. Nicholas put an emphasis when it came to the primary storage solutions. Things like the primary processing. Yeah, and one of the key things that we are always talking about, the farm to fork kind of delivery, where what kind of technologies, or is there a boom in technologies that should happen, especially when it comes to reaching markets or consumption centers? Yeah, and the last one, the last piece is on things market and consumer. Yes, market and consumer demand. Yeah. So I mean, on market and consumer demand, some of the potential agri-tech solutions, and when it comes to market and consumer demand, I'll just tag it back into mostly what Europe has done at the moment, and what North America has done at the moment, especially when it comes to integrated logistics for agriculture. We have a company that is focusing, a portfolio company that is focusing right now on that. Things like it's called hyper local farming has to be built. And one of the key things that we are always talking about, and that has to be improved, especially in Africa, the food traceability solutions. Yeah. So on food traceability solutions, I believe when it comes to consumer demand, it will just bring in some safe and improved quality food especially on the Africa concept. So those are the key technologies that we are always talking about, that we're always on the lookout, especially on the investor side, and what we need to see increase in the African landscape. So there are companies that have already built it at the moment in the African landscape. Like I gave an example when it comes to mechanization and what Cote d'Ivoire is doing at the moment, but we need to see more and more of this coming up at the moment. Yeah.
I think he's walked away from his seat. Yeah, but yes, I mean, your points are well articulated, and that's how the future needs to be looked at.
Yes, and again, I mean, so when it comes to technology, and this is an emphasis that I didn't put in earlier, technology in the companies that are coming up at the moment, there has to be a dialogue that needs to happen in working groups, yeah, with the current agtech companies, just to understand their needs and the current issues and what exactly can be built or can be complemented in this. So I've seen this strongly happening in Ghana. I think that needs to be duplicated in most of the African countries. Yeah, as we wait for Mike.
Just to add something as we wait for Mike, if we could help governments largely have a way to monitor the market access area, the market, what people are growing. So the market, if they can have a bigger market look or production look at what is currently in the system, it will help. And it will also help them just know when to import food from the neighboring countries and when to export. And another area that will also be very keen to follow will be the financial inclusion and the financed access to the farmers, as well as ag insurance.
Yeah, and since we are still waiting for Mike, I strongly agree with Beryl. So getting governments organized around successful economic recovery. But what we've seen from our end, especially when we're trying to talk with governments are always asking us for examples. What are other African countries doing at the moment when it comes to successful economic recovery, when it comes to agriculture? And one of the countries that I'm always talking about when it comes to prioritization is Morocco. I mean, Morocco prioritized high value crops, or it's called the green plan, like citrus fruits and tomatoes. Yeah. We have, when it comes to the planning space, Ethiopia at the moment. Ethiopia has developed 8 diagnostic studies and identified 2 key challenges to transform the agriculture. So it has an entire study when it comes to that. And Ethiopia is also doing well, where it set up its agricultural transformation agency to support key stakeholders while strengthening existing institutions. Here in Kenya, there is a food supply task force under its central COVID response structure. And the reason as to why that task force is there is to coordinate the food security response, that also dialogues with the private sector to scale the agri investments that is here. I mean, Liberia also has that particular structure itself. So with all of this, for it to be successful, especially with the governments, and what we've seen from where I'm sitting is that it has to be driven by head of states, and an inner circle, which should include mostly maybe the DFIs that are in those particular countries. There has to be a compelling vision, yeah, and a strategy has to be in place, and then the kind of some resources also have to be in place, and then things like mechanism for coordination also has to be in place. But also to emphasize on my example, but with governments, the only way it can work is what we've seen is also giving them what has actually passed, or what's the success factor in the other African countries. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible now. Technological challenge, but I'm back. Thank you so much for picking up the conversation. Very interesting insights from you, Andrew, Beryl, Sriram, Hemente, and Nicholas. Thank you so much. So I think we are almost up. That our time is almost up. So I'd just like to thank you once again for making the time and giving us such great insights on this discussion today. Nicholas from Twiga, Hemense from Apex, Sriram from Kuza, Beryl from the World Bank, and Andrew from Growth Tech Partners. Thank you so much for making the time. I'd also like to thank the partners, the participants that have attended this session today. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for engaging us in this conversation. It doesn't end here. Sankap is still on. There's Sankap in person that's happening tomorrow at the KSMS. Those of you who are in Nairobi and are going to be attending, kindly just look for us and we can carry on the conversation from there. So once again, thank you so much. You can also access some of these recordings from Sankap on our social media platforms. This is on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as well. And in case Sriram has shared his information, in case any one of you would like to get in touch, kindly just share information here, and we'll be able to carry out this conversation more online. Thank you so much once again, and have a good rest of the day.
Mike, what is happening tomorrow? Tomorrow, is it are there other topics? A repeat of what is the agenda of tomorrow in person?
Yeah, so there are different discussions that are going to be happening in person, different sessions that are going to be happening as well. But definitely we can pick this up, Nicholas, offline and just have a more detailed discussion on that.